Hello, I'm Abigail Harrison-Moore. I'm a Professor of Art History and Museum Studies at the University of Leeds, and luckily I'm the Principal Investigator on the Whose Power project. I was trying to think about projects that I'd like to work on that would enable me to bring together everything I've done across my academic career that I've really enjoyed. So I've had this wonderful time thinking around histories of those who've been invisible in the history of energy, particularly women. I'm an art historian who works on bumpy objects, so I'm very interested in objects within the home in the late 19th century. And of course, that was the moment when we had the ability to transition to gas and electricity because the technology existed. I was really interested in why people made the decision to bring scary, silent, energies that you can't smell into their home, and how design helps mediate the relationship between people and energy. And then for a very long time, I've also been working with young people across the UK, across Yorkshire, to try and engage them in thinking about careers in museums, creative subjects and the humanities. So I applied to get some money from the AHRC in order to bring those two bits of my life together and think about what happens when I work with young people, to think about the stuff I know about the history of energy, to think about the future of energy. So that was kind of the starting point. It totally changed once I met the Preservative Party.
Yes, our voice is important. We're allowed to use it and be empowered to use it.
With great difficulty, great effort, great fun, and great food.
Meeting people where they're at and approaching individuals as individuals.
Talk to them and listen to what they say.
Create a space where they feel empowered.
Despite the fact they've got less life experience, the way they see the world is still really important. You've got to give them a chance to make themselves heard.
They have so much to say that's so valuable. So it's just a case of kind of taking that leap of faith and saying, we trust you.
If we ask them their opinions and give them power to make these decisions from an earlier age, it gives them more responsibility because they will be leading the charge going forward.
Give everyone a voice, give everyone a chance to, pick up the slack of other people, work in their own way.
It is good for young people to be in an environment where they're used to being listened to and used to expressing their opinions, because that is the first step to make change in the world.
They are a group of enthusiastic, passionate young curators who really care about what they do and are not afraid to challenge and make change within arts and heritage, but also just inclusion.
It's a challenge for anybody, including myself. If you asked me to put into words what the Preservative Party do, week in, week out, I'd tell you that it's something that you can't write.
When I joined, I think I probably would have said, I don't need any sort of support in a group, I'm fine. And now I kind of go a few weeks without coming and I go, oh, my life is rubbish at the moment because I've not had Pres Party to put things into perspective and talk things through with, because they're just a really great bunch of people.
I was interested in history in general, and I mean museums hold history, so I had that sort of interest in it. In volunteering for a museum, not really, until after Overlooked happened, and I was like, oh, this was pretty cool. I can do this again.
Whose Power, I think when it came to us, started as a project about women and energy in the home, but rightly so, Pres Party have a lot of opinions. So now Whose Power really kind of looks at energy change, but it looks at who has power, who has had power, and kind of the future of power dynamics. Who's in charge, who can make decisions, who has the right to have opinions in the past and in the future.
In January 2022, I came along and I said to the group, hello, I'm Abigail. I'd like to work on this project. And the group went, and I completely get that, because I was a complete stranger. I represented this weird thing called a professor at the University of Leeds, but also the Preservative Party were just very actively involved in the final stages of curating and then launching the incredible exhibition Overlooked. And Overlooked blew my mind. It changed everything I thought about what was possible in museums. And all through that process of travelling, chatting, eating Pringles, getting to know you all as individuals. Our project very slowly started to emerge. So the project has completely changed from where we started, and I bloody love that, because that's what the Preservative Party has done for me, and that's what the Preservative Party does.
We're not working at like the fastest pace, we really meet at like 2 hours every Thursday, but there's always the trust that we'll keep progressing towards what we want to do, if that makes sense.
Ray is a big part of Pres Party, and like everybody knows who Ray is here, and so them making zines for the project and then other personal ones was just sort of, it was just a given that zines are going to tie into our project. It's a good way for us to compile all the info that we've researched, that we've learned, that we want to express to people that we couldn't necessarily talk about in the exhibit itself, considering the space that we had. It's just a part of Pres Party at this point.
So at its core, it's about power in two senses of the word. So in the very literal sense of electricity and energy, how that usage has changed over the years. And then in the more metaphorical sense of who that energy and electricity and power has been for, who's had control of that, how has it affected people, and how has that shaped what we see today. I hope that people look at Whose Power and reconsider the power dynamics that they have in their own mind about whose history gets told in terms of social, domestic history.
Whose Power, it's about just how people in general can be empowered, whether it be political or it could be people that are in groups like Pres Party who are a bit apprehensive at joining in and just feel empowered.
I had written a bunch of questions that were shown during the exhibit.
Well, I just enjoy the main storytelling side of things and just giving and pitching and presenting stuff, because I really enjoy that side.
I liked, I guess, collecting all the information and stuff and doing all the research and then compiling it into something that people will be able to see and be able to look at and be able to think about. I also really loved installation. I enjoyed doing that for Overlooked and for Whose Power so much.
I've done a number of things. I helped in the exhibition stages, kind of picking objects, making lists, editing labels, that sort of thing, deciding where things were going to be put up. And then I was involved in 2 episodes of the podcast, one as an interviewee and one as an interviewer.
With our work, we use these blooming great, huge, dirty objects from the Discovery Centre in Leeds that we spent a wonderful day pulling out and photographing against our buttercup yellow background. And those objects, whether they be a gas washing machine or a bellows vacuum cleaner or an oven from the 1980s, allowed us to start to ask questions of ourselves, of our own relationship to energy, because quite often at home we press a button or we turn on a microwave and we don't think about what that's actually doing. The object is the mediator between the energy decision we make and how we use energy. But using those images of objects that were often quite familiar to visitors because they remembered those objects in their own home or in their grandma's home, allows us to ask questions and also to say to everybody, we all have power. And that's so fundamentally important to the work of the Preservative Party. It's about enabling everybody to feel like they have a power and using museums to help them feel like they have a power.
I think it's making safe spaces, establishing trust with people, letting people know that it is okay to share your voice, to amplify your voice.
I think in actually taking action and responding to what they're saying.
It's trusting them that they can say those kinds of things or be profound about certain kinds of things, which I suppose you might not expect as much if they're younger and they've got less life experience, but that doesn't exclude them from having something useful to say.
One way we could do it is having sort of a Pres Party for different things, whether it be sports, arts, history, because it gives them interested in a particular area at a very young age.
We amplify voices by listening really carefully to them.
You allow them to talk about what they want to talk about. You allow them to focus on the issues that matter to them.
Even if young people are asked what they think of something, even that can make a difference.
By actually giving young people opportunities to have their voices heard.
I'm really excited by the power of podcasting to amplify the voices of people who are least listened to in society.
You listen to what young people tell you they need to share their voice, and then you do your absolute best to facilitate that.
It kind of has to be done as a whole, and I think it's a societal effort to uplift and amplify the voices of young people.
I can really remember how the idea of a podcast came about, because when I wrote the application, as you do, I said to the HRC, this is participatory research, so actually I don't know what we're going to produce, so that's the whole point. But I wrote into the application this spurious, random, digital interactive, because I knew that I wanted to connect the objects across 9 sites in these museums, and I wanted to enable people who couldn't come to the museum to have a sense of our project. And then we were in London, and we were walking from the train station to the British Museum, talking about lots of things, and 2 members of the group said to me, we're really interested in podcasting. We listen to podcasts.
Swear Abigail credits it to me and Ray, and I don't typically remember that happening, but I'll accept that it was probably because Ray was mentioning podcasts a lot, because Ray listens to them a lot.
I didn't necessarily think of it as a research method, or think of it as something that the group would want to do, or that it was sort of in our scope of work to do, but it actually makes a lot of sense, because every week the group come in, they're authentically themselves, and we have really interesting conversations. And it kind of led on to wouldn't it be interesting if we could listen back to this conversation? Or, it's really hard for us sometimes to write down what we think or to turn it into an exhibition. And people started to talk about, we could just record a standard Preservative Party session and people could just listen to that. Wouldn't that be interesting and useful?
I think it's a really good way of going about it, because we could I suppose if you have the skills to do a podcast, you can do it all by yourself. You can then take ownership of your voice and what you say and stuff.
It was good, it was weird. I'd been in sort of that setting before, but it wasn't for a podcast, it was me interviewing somebody. And so for just a regular radio show, but being in Helix and being in that room and having Abigail asking the questions and stuff, it was pretty cool. It was really far more relaxed than I thought it was going to be.
In Whose Power, I've been involved in the podcast where I've given about how we can empower young people through different methods as well. So I've given my input there, and hopefully young people will learn from it.
In terms of the podcast and the project, in terms of who holds the power in museum institutions and whether or not young people should be more involved in those decisions, I hope they can reflect on the power in their own decision-making processes and how their view of things might have led to a bit of an unfair representation or even a more equal representation, and try to respond to that in the most appropriate way.
The whole reason we did it is because we are, as Press Party, we're not very typical in the academic sense. We're not going to do this whole project and then write a big report on it or something. We like to talk, and we talk a lot. So doing a podcast is much easier for us to compile everything that we've learned and done.
It also allows members who maybe they are more articulate, or maybe they're more creative when they're using their own voice, actually speaking rather than writing or being in film. So yeah, it's allowed many members of the group who may have been previously reserved or in, not really known how to engage with the project. This being audio-based has really allowed some people to come into their own.
When we explore the idea of power in the histories of washing clothes in the home, we discover hidden histories of the women making everyday energy decisions. We can also understand more about why their stories have been forgotten or have remained invisible in the histories of industry, power, and energy.
Well, I always see our group sessions, the Preservative Party sessions, as being a form of education for me. It's like if school was fun. So when I heard about the My Learning resource, I thought the My Learning resource would be a really good idea. Some of the washing machines in our film, including this one, required filling with water, heating the water, hand-turning the washing in the machine drum, removing the wet clothing, putting it through the mangle to get rid of the excess water, drying the laundry, and still ironing it.
In terms of the Preservative Party, I hope that Whose Power, not to sound cliche, but I hope that it has empowered some of our younger people and given them skills to kind of do different things in their own practice in museums. In terms of whose power outside of the kind of press party meetings, I think possibly it has kind of the opportunity, or it has the power to change the way that museums function, the way that museums work with young people and engage young people. I think that the members of the Preservative Party, again, are so opinionated, but I think that the things that they have put into whose power and how much of themselves they've put into whose power could actually kind of really make waves in academia and in the heritage sector.
I think I've definitely changed in the 2 years that I've been at Press Party. I think a lot of people who know me would say I'm probably not the most chill person in the world, but I think Press Party has helped me to be able to kind of take a step back and look more widely at what's important, who's getting a say, how to collaborate with people, what the consequences of that are. I think I probably wouldn't be who I am without Press Party, and I'm not sure I want to be who I would be without Press Party, because I think it changes everything for the better.
It's a funny story, but I was able to speak on like a radio segment for Bradford Community Radio. I was gardening on the day because I garden there on Wednesdays, and someone from the museum walked around and was like, "We've got people from the radio want to do interviews. You wouldn't mind giving an interview, would it?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, why not? I don't see why not." I don't think I would have had the confidence to accept that and do it without having the prior experience doing the podcast first. I remember because there was like a big radio booth box they had. Like, I think it must be like a portable one they can carry around with them. I remember going in there and seeing a similar setup to the one they had at the podcast recording when I was there at the University of Leeds, and I was like, I can do this. I've done this before. And it was lots of fun.
I've noticed that there's members of the Press Party that have been quite quiet in previous projects, that have really come into themselves and kind of grown in confidence, and I think that that's a testament to the team that are kind of involved in running this Whose Power project. I think a real highlight for me was seeing people kind of go and have their photos taken at one of our podcasting days. You know, these are individuals that may have not had the confidence before to kind of put themselves out there in that way, and to me that's a really, really significant step. And again, I don't think that would have happened without this project. I think that this project has really fostered a really kind of tight community for the people that have been involved, and kind of given everybody that space to be themselves, be able to voice their opinions.
I thought I knew, because I've worked for 30 years at the university engaging young people from lots of different backgrounds. I didn't know. I didn't know until I worked with you all, with the Preservative Party, how difficult, how hard, how challenging it is to just get your first foot in the door. You know, 30 years ago, I found it hard. Now, it's so hard. And so I guess the other thing that this project has done specifically for me is it's held a big mirror up, and it's really challenged me to do better, to continue to do better. And I now know what the next 30 years of my career looks like, because it's working with all of you.
What's next? I think it's always an interesting question. My bosses and colleagues always like to ask me what's next, and I kind of just say, well, it's up to the group to decide what's next for them. There's a lot of talk about how we spread awareness of this body of work that we've been creating over the last 3 years. We've got lots of films and lots of audio and different mediums that we've been working on, and I think we're kind of wanting to create a bit of a digital archive, really, or a platform for ourselves, so that people can quite easily find the work that we've done and can learn about it. We've been so busy doing the work that it's sometimes quite difficult to shout about it, and for colleagues across the service and across the country to access it. So yeah, I think we're going to be kind of working on like shouting about ourselves a bit and getting the word out there.